Hi, and welcome to Lisa's Stamp Studio. I'm going to teach you a really neat watercoloring technique. And here's the great news. You don't have to have any experience whatsoever. Here's the card we're going to be making today. Isn't it gorgeous? And so simple. The beauty is you can use any stamp set over this watercolor technique background. If you're here visiting from YouTube, you'll find a link down in the video description below, which will navigate you over to the pictures for today's card. And if you haven't already subscribed to my YouTube channel, I would love to invite you to do so. Make sure you click that small bell icon next to the subscribe button so that you'll receive notifications of when I'm live here on YouTube, as well as when I upload a new video. Let's head over to the stamp table and let's get started on today's project. Here's a close-up of the card we're going to be creating today. Isn't this beautiful? I love how the colors bleed together. The great thing is it's super simple. You're going to want to protect your work surface, and I'm using the small grid sheets. You're going to be able to find all these products in my online store at lisasstampstudio.com. I'm going to begin with a piece of watercolor paper. This measures 3 3/4 by 5.5. I'll place the cutting dimensions for you below in the video description. We're going to be using an Aqua Painter. This tool is fabulous because it eliminates your need for a small cup and a paintbrush. Tap water goes down inside, and then you're just going to screw the lid back on. They come in a 2-pack, and you'll see the bristles on this one are rather wide, which I like to use when I'm doing a large wash type background. The other one has more of a defined tip, which is great for watercoloring in detailed images. I'm going to place the cap right here on the back of the Aqua Painter. That'll keep me from losing it. And the very first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get my ink ready. I'm going to be using 2 colors. I'm going to be using Pacific Point and Gorgeous Grape. You never want to place your Aqua Painter in the ink pads. That's never a good thing. Even though they're dye-based, that will actually absorb some of the color from the ink pad itself. So I like to use a clear stamp block. So I'm going to pick up a little bit of the blue here and a little bit of the Gorgeous Grape here. I'm going to start by mentioning that no 2 cards are going to look the same. This is a very random technique. Very first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to squeeze some water from the Aqua Painter through the bristles onto my cardstock, and I'm just going to rub it in. I want to be able to saturate this exactly where I'm going to want the color, so I'm kind of just concentrating in the center area. I'm going to start with the grape first, and I'm picking up some color right from the block, and then I'm going to tap it on here, and you're going to see what's going to happen. The color is actually going to dissipate because of the water that's on the paper, and I'm just going to dab it on. There's no rhyme or reason to this, and if you don't have enough water, you can go ahead and spread some more. You're looking for light and dark areas, and I'm just dabbing the brush all around. This next step is requiring patience. You'll need to let it sit and dry, or you can do what I did, and that's use the heat tool. The heat tool is designed for heat embossing, which we're also going to do on this card, so I'll show you how its intended purpose is, but it's also going to help speed up the drying process here. I'm going to slide these up and out of the way, and I'm going to turn the gun on speed 2, which is the highest. You're going to notice that the tip is all encased because it does get very hot. And then I'm just basically going to blow dry this. You're going to notice that the air from the heat tool will move the water around a little bit, but that's quite all right because remember, we're after a very random pattern. You do not want to add the next color until this layer is completely dry, otherwise you're going to have a muddy mix. Now that that's completely dry, we're going to come in now with the Pacific Point, which is the blue. And I'm going to do the exact same thing. I'm going to add more water to the cardstock. And I'm going to add that primarily in the areas where I don't have any other color. I'm going to move it down a little bit here to the bottom as well. I'm going to pick up that color and I'm going to blend it in. Again, I'm just tapping on that color. No technique required. Just go ahead and just dab it where you want it. I'm looking to cover an area large enough to make sure that it's going to, and then we're going to do the exact same thing with the heat tool. You can go back over it if you want an area that's a little bit darker. I'm going to take my Aqua Painter and I'm going to add a little bit more water down here at the bottom just to kind of prep the paper. And then I'm coming back in with the Gorgeous Grape and I'm just going to add a couple little areas of darker shade. Again, every layer of color is going to require that you let it dry, otherwise you're just going to have a muddy mess on your hands. Once you have it down, then go ahead and dry it one more time. Make sure you're using watercolor paper for this technique because it's the most absorbent to the amount of water that we've placed on here. I'm giving it a quick look and it looks dry, so now we can add our stamped image. This beautiful horse image comes from the stamp set called Let It Ride. You'll find that image here in the Occasions catalog with Stampin' Up. Now, if you don't already have a demonstrator and you're interested in receiving copies of the current catalogs, I'd be more than happy to send them to you. Just leave me a comment below. I'm going to be using my Memento black ink, and since the stamp is very, very large, I'm going to flip it face up on my work surface, and I'm going to hold the ink pad and ink it this way. That's going to ensure that I don't miss an area while I'm inking it. And then I'll go ahead and place that image inside that watercolor area. Lots of firm, even pressure to make sure you press out the design. Watercolor paper has kind of a unique surface to it. It's a little bit bumpy, which makes it really resilient to the water. So you're going to want to make sure you take your time and you press this out well. I'm going to set that aside, and I'm going to bring in a small scrap of basic black cardstock. I want to prep the surface in order to do some heat embossing, and I'm going to use the embossing buddy. There's an anti-static powder in here that will leave a small trace on the paper. It actually signals the powder to only stick where there is ink. And I'm going to be using Versamark. From that exact same stamp set, I have pulled out the greeting that says, "Live as if someone left the gate open." And I'll go ahead and I'll ink that up in the Versamark ink. The Versamark ink is a watermark pad. Not only is it great for embossing, but it's also great for tone-on-tone backgrounds on colored cardstock. I'm going to come in with my coffee filter and my embossing powder. Go ahead and open that up. I'm going to hold that over the coffee filter to catch my excess because I want to sprinkle it very, very generously. And then I'll give it a quick flick and tap off any excess that I don't need. The coffee filter then can be pinched, and the excess can be poured right back inside your bottle, so there's very, very little waste whatsoever. You can see that this is quite small, so I'm going to grab myself a small pair of tweezers and I'm going to latch onto this. That's going to help extend my reach while I'm drying this. And I'm going to go back to the heat tool. Same speed, speed 2, and I'm going to work in small circular motion close to the paper. And that's going to take that powdery finish and turn it into a beautiful raised glossy impression. Take your time and work one area at a time and move slowly as you go across. Now we're ready to put our card together. I've got a base of basic black cardstock, 5.5 by 8.5, and I'm going to fold this in half. I did score it just prior to you joining me on the video. And then I'll use my bone folder for that nice crisp edge. And then my image is going to get mounted here in the center. I'm going to leave a small black border on either side. And you can see that the watercolor paper does come out a little bit warped, and that's from the water and the heat tool. So my best advice to adhering it is to use a very strong adhesive, and I love tear-in tape. I'm going to bring in my silicone craft sheet to protect my work surface from any adhesive, and I'll go ahead and flip this upside down. And it's simply just like its name. You're going to lay it down where you want it. I'm going to use my fingernail here at the end, and then you're just going to tear. And I'm going to do that around all 4 sides. Once the tape is down, you're going to want to make sure that you press your finger into the paper backing so that when we go to lift off this paper side to reveal the other sticky side, it's not going to pull up the whole layer of tape. I'm going to be using my Take Your Pick pickup tool. The putty tip on this is fabulous. It helps to pick up small pieces of cardstock and sequins. It also comes with a refill, which is really convenient. On this side, you'll find that there's a dial here, and there are interchangeable tips that come with it. This one's a spatula, and you can see I've used this quite a bit. Helps me get up underneath those dimensionals if I need to lift them and reposition them on my card. I've got my paper piercing tool on this end, and it also comes with an interchangeable double-sided stylus tool. You cannot beat this for $10. Now, you're not going to find this in any of our current publications because it's rather new, but it is available in my online store. And then what I'm going to do is just kind of use that paper piercing tip to come up underneath here to help me lift that off. Now that we have our adhesive on, we're going to go ahead and center this in the middle of our card base, leaving that border on either side. And then I'll just press that in place. Remember our greeting? Here it is. I'm going to flip that over, and I'm grabbing my dimensionals. These are pre-cut pieces of double-sided foam tape. Absolutely love them. You get 300 in a package, and I'll remove those backings. And then what we're going to do is we're going to situate this greeting. You can also reposition it down here. And you know what? Because this card is going to be slightly different than the one I made previously, I think I've got more room down here. So I'm going to change it. I'm going to move this one to the bottom. So here is the card we created together today and the one I created before you joined me. Remember, I told you no two are going to be alike. Lots of fun, and I hope you'll give this technique a try. If you've enjoyed today's video, please give it a thumbs up. That's a like here on YouTube. Thanks so much for joining me, everyone. I look forward to seeing you next time. Have a great day.